Pleased to be here today at this important meeting of trade ministers. It's really the first opportunity to take stock after what was a very significant number of announcements last week. What's becoming abundantly clear now to anybody who was under any illusion in relation to this is that tariffs are really bad. They're bad for the US economy, they're bad for the European economy, they're bad for the Irish economy, and we need to find a negotiated way forward. I hope today provides us with an opportunity in the first instance to share insights, but also to discuss how we get this to a better place in terms of engagement. Ireland is very clear, as I believe are the overwhelming majority of European countries, that any actions we take must be taken with one agenda in mind, and that is to de-escalate, to get to a point of negotiation, because disagreement needs to ultimately end in agreement when people sit around a table and work out a way forward. I think the turmoil being seen in global stock markets and global markets is a real indication of the pain that tariffs are causing and will cause, not just to economies in some sort of macro sense, but also to individual citizens in Europe and individual people in the United States of America. So I look forward to taking stock today, and then I look forward tomorrow to travelling to Washington for engagement with the US administration also.
Thomas, just on the targeting of tech services and digital services, I suppose what is Ireland's view on that? Like, is that an absolute red line? Where do we sit in the debate, obviously, with the concentration of firms in Dublin?
So firstly, I think if you were to get into that space, it would be an extraordinary escalation at a time when we must be working for de-escalation. It is in many ways the nuclear option if you start talking about the use of the anti-coercion instruments and the likes. So what we need to do here is step by step, in a measured way, consider how best to respond. And I'm very clear from my engagement with multiple European counterparts and our ongoing engagement with the Commission that the majority view is certainly not in that space of going near the ACI at this moment in time, but much rather looking to see how we can respond in the first instance to the steel and aluminium tariffs, and then crucially how we can get to a position of negotiation.
Do you understand, is bourbon off that list of the steel and aluminium retaliatory tariffs? And second, on the much bigger list, I mean, tech services, the US just doesn't export enough goods to the EU for us to target tit for tat, which the Commission wants. So services will have to be on there eventually.
So in relation to the list responding to steel and aluminium, we've yet to see the final list. I did write to the Commission outlining Ireland's concerns and views as part of the consultation, and would have highlighted the issue of bourbon and questioned, I suppose, the strategic relevance of it now, considering the dynamic had shifted in US politics since 2018. I hope that's reflected in the finalised list this evening. But in many ways, your second question makes my point, because actually so much has moved on since then. If you think of it like this, I mean, President Trump announced steel and aluminium tariffs, about 26 billion worth of a hit in Europe. He announced tariffs on cars, about 75 billion. But actually the last announcement in the Rose Garden is now a further 380 million. So even Europe responding to steel and aluminium does need to be seen in relation to that. It's a very small and measured response when you look at the total quantum of what he's announced. You are right in terms of the scale of response that would be required if you were to get into the tit for tat. But again, the European Commission, and I believe the overwhelming majority of member states, which is not to get into tit for tat, it's not to accept that where we are now is the inevitable outcome, and actually seek to engage. And I really think economics is on our side here. No matter who's in the White House, no matter what anybody's ideological view are, a trading relationship of 1.6 trillion euro between the European Union and the United States of America really matters. And we're beginning to already see the US markets, and I think people in the United States themselves begin to convey that to their administration. So what's important here is that Europe reacts in a calm and measured way. Time is somewhat on our side. We've got to actually take this step by step, and that's what we're going to do, and that's certainly the message that Ireland will convey here today.
Thomas, it doesn't seem that the US administration, and Trump in particular, is in the mood to talk. What's the EU's approach then, where it seems that we're talking to a bit of a brick wall?
I think we always have to be careful to not respond to kind of every comment made in the US administration, and I say that respectfully. But if I look at a range of things that we've heard in recent days, certainly the word negotiation and talks have been mentioned many times. In the executive order that President Trump himself signed, it provides space for people to engage and negotiate and get to a better place on tariffs. I heard the comments of the Commerce Secretary and the Treasury Secretary over the weekend in US media, both talking about engagement and negotiation, and indeed Maros Sefcovic himself was in contact with Howard Lutnick with a view to seeing how to take this forward. So I think again, it is important. It is important to stay calm here. It is important to take this step by step. The first thing to do today is for Europe to come together here in Luxembourg and demonstrate unity. I think that is really important. People like to often, I suppose, don't attach enough of a value or importance to European unity. People thought European unity wouldn't hold up in relation to Ukraine. It largely did. They thought it wouldn't hold up in relation to Brexit. It did. They thought it wouldn't hold up in relation to COVID. It did. And I've no doubt that European unity is our strength here, and European unity will be maintained. That's the first step. Second step then is for the Commission later today, probably tonight, to publish the countermeasures in relation to steel and aluminium. And then thirdly, in the background and constantly, is trying to find a way forward in terms of negotiation. So everything we do here today, everything we do in the days ahead, has to be to create the environment that brings the US administration to the table. And I think there are many, many reasons, not just here, but in the global markets, that are going to make that an inevitability at the time ahead.
Do you think an Irish minister will be able to come away with something from Washington, or better understanding from Washington than the EU so far has? Because those talks haven't worked so far, even though Shevchevich has been twice and called once.
Yeah, no, I think obviously from an Irish perspective, we have a close relationship with the United States over many years. We have an understanding in many ways of the business culture that exists between our two countries, but we're very clear we're firmly and proudly members of the European Union, and anything that I say in Washington in the coming days will be in support of the European Union efforts to get to a place of engagement and negotiation. I really believe that if people get around the table, a way forward can be found. This is a trading relationship that matters, and Europe has been very clear, we're up for a deal. I mean, President von der Leyen has talked about wanting to address any of the trade barriers that exist, wanting to buy more stuff from the United States and vice versa. We're up for a deal. I suppose the outstanding question is the United States up for one? And what we have to consider here today, what can we do strategically to help further, I suppose, increase our own leverage to get the United States around a negotiating table. So I look forward to having an engagement with Secretary Lutnick. I think it's always important to keep the lines of communication open, to share insights, to pick up the latest views, but also to really stress that the relationship that Ireland and the US have is two-way. Sometimes I think when it's commented on, it's commented in a way from times past. 200,000 jobs created by Irish firms in the US, every single state in the United States having jobs created by Irish companies investing more than $350 million in 1 year in the US economy. And even when you look to the US companies in Ireland, of which there are many, the US economy is benefiting from that, because 80% of what the pharma companies in Ireland send back to the US aren't finished products. They go back into American factories where value is added, workers are hired, taxes are paid. So the relationship is much more interdependent and interconnected than perhaps headlines in the United States sometimes indicate.
Okay, thanks so much, folks.
Some of your colleagues have suggested that it might be necessary to support affected industries, especially when you look at European markets today. Companies are really feeling the effect of these tariffs. Is that something that Ireland is interested in? Are there any industries that you think need to be targeted with support?
I think at a European level, we're going to really have to accelerate conversations around competitiveness and productivity. There's an awful lot we can do in terms of controlling what we can control at a European level that would directly support European industry, European jobs, and the European economy. If there's a need to support individual sectors as we go through this global financial challenge and the economic turmoil that President Trump's announcements have caused, Ireland certainly will always keep that under review. We've a proud track record in our country of supporting business, supporting enterprise. But I want to say this, and I say this to businesses in Ireland, and I think businesses right across Europe, there is no scheme that any government that can devise that would be better than trying to mitigate the damage of tariffs. And that's where the focus has to be in the here and now.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll see you later. Cheers.